The auction bell rang, and my whole body went still, because stillness was the only thing that kept the whip away. I did not look up. Looking up meant hoping, and hoping was a mistake I had stopped making a long time ago. My name is Veska, and 3 years earlier, I had a sky of my own, a family who called my name at sunset, and hands that had never once been chained. Now my wrists were bound in cold metal rings, my feet were bare, on a stage built from scrap steel, and a voice above me was reading out numbers like I was a crate of grain. The trading station smelled of oil and fear. Rows of buyers stood below the stage, their eyes moving over me the way they might look over a machine part, checking if it still worked. I had learned to read every species that came through this station. The Drothy buyers wanted strength. The Corvi wanted beauty, and the humans, when they came, were the ones everyone whispered about the loudest. I had never stood before a human buyer. I had only heard the stories, passed from cage to cage, growled out by traders who wanted us frightened enough to behave. Humans do not stop, the story said. Humans do not know when to quit. A human soldier once fought through an entire fleet alone, and did not stop until every ship was silent. If a human buys you, the old Ithran woman in the cage beside me once whispered, you pray it is quick. So when the broker leaned toward me and said a human had placed a bid, I felt my hearts, both of them, slam against my ribs at once. I forced my eyes to stay down. I told myself it did not matter who bought me. Owner after owner, the pattern was always the same. A voice would bark an order. A hand would grab my arm. I would learn the shape of my new fear, and I would survive it, the way I had survived everyone before. The bidding rose fast. I heard credits called out, numbers climbing higher than the ones before, and for one strange moment, I almost believed I was worth something. Then it stopped. The gavel came down. The auctioneer read the name of the buyer, a name I did not know, and said the word sold, as if it meant nothing at all. I made myself stand straight as footsteps came up the ramp toward the stage. I braced my shoulders the way I always braced them, the way that had kept me from breaking during worse days than this one. I waited for the hand. Instead, a man crouched down in front of me, bringing his eyes level with mine. He was tall, even folded down like that, with sun marks across his face, and quiet, steady eyes that did not move over my body the way the others had. He did not smile the way traders smiled when they wanted something. He simply looked at me and waited, as if he expected me to speak first. I said nothing. I had learned that speaking first only gave them a reason to remind you of your place. You can stop bracing, he said. His voice was low and careful, like he was speaking to something easily startled. Nobody is going to hurt you here. Not by me, not while I am standing in front of you. I did not believe him. I told myself I would not believe him. Every owner before him had said something soft in the first moment, and every one of them had shown their true shape within a day. He reached into his coat, and my whole body went rigid, waiting for a weapon, a leash, a collar control. Instead, he pulled out a small silver device, no larger than a coin, and pressed it against the ring locked around my neck. There was a click, a hiss of released pressure, and the collar fell open into his open palm. I stared at it, lying there in his hand like it weighed nothing at all. That was a manumission chip, he said, closing his fingers around the broken collar. It cancels ownership the second it touches the lock. Legally, right now, in front of everyone on this station, you belong to no one. The crowd below the stage had gone quiet, watching. I searched his face for the trick, the hidden cruelty that always came wrapped in kindness like this. I found none that I could see, but 3 years of chains had taught me that the worst owners were the best at hiding. Why? I finally said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to sound. Because a person should never have to be bought in order to be safe, he said. I am sorry, it took a bidding stage to get you out of here. I know that does not make sense yet. It will, if you let it. He stood and offered his hand, palm open, fingers loose, the way you offer a hand to someone who might refuse it. I looked at that hand for a long moment. I did not take it. My legs simply would not let me trust an open palm after 3 years of closed fists. But I followed him off the stage anyway, because whatever waited beyond that ramp had to be better than another cage. His ship was small and plain, nothing like the trading vessels I had been dragged through before. There were no chains bolted to the walls, no restraint rings in the floor. He showed me a room with a real door, one that locked from the inside, and told me the code was mine alone to know. "You do not have to tell me anything about yourself," he said, standing carefully at the threshold, not stepping past it. "You do not have to thank me. You do not have to be grateful. You just have to be here, breathing, for as long as you want to be here. When you want to leave, you tell me, and I will take you wherever you want to go." I waited for the catch. There is always a catch. I searched every word he spoke for the hook hidden beneath it, the way traders hid needles in soft cloth. Days passed, and the hook never came. He knocked before entering any room I was in, even the galley, even the open deck where anyone could walk freely. He asked before he moved anything that belonged near me, even a cup left on a table. When a loud clang rang out from the cargo bay on the third day, and I flinched hard enough to knock over a chair, he lowered his voice for a full week afterward, speaking so softly I sometimes had to lean in to hear him, as if he had filed away the sound of my fear and decided never to cause it again. His name, I learned, was Daniel Ashford. He did not talk about himself unless I asked, and even then, he answered plainly, without the boasting I had heard from other buyers who liked to remind you how powerful they were. He had been a supply pilot once, running medical goods through dangerous lanes during a border conflict, before he left that work behind, for reasons he did not explain right away. On the 9th day, I finally asked him the question that had been sitting in my chest since the auction stage. "Why do humans buy people?" I said, "if not to own them?" He set down the drink he had been holding, something bitter and dark that he called coffee, and thought about the question longer than I expected. "Some of us do not buy people," he said. "Some of us buy freedom. From the outside, it looks exactly the same. Credits change hands, a gavel falls, but what happens after is completely different. I know it does not feel different yet. I am not asking you to feel it yet. I am just telling you the truth of it." "And the stories," I pressed, because I needed to know, because not knowing had kept me afraid for 9 days straight. "They say your kind does not stop, that you are the most dangerous thing in the galaxy." Something moved behind his eyes, not anger, but a tiredness I recognized from my own reflection during the worst weeks of my captivity. "We do not stop," he admitted. "Not when something we care about is in danger. That part of the story is true. But not stopping to protect someone is not the same as being a danger to them. If it ever comes down to it, I will be dangerous for you, not to you. There is a difference, even if it does not look like one from where you are standing." I did not believe him fully that night. 9 days is not enough to undo 3 years. But that night, for the first time since the raiders had taken my sky away from me, I slept without waiting for a hand that never came. The weeks that followed were quiet, in a way I had forgotten quiet could feel. Daniel taught me the names of the star systems we passed through, and I taught him a few words of Ithran, the language of my cloud spires, watching his mouth struggle over sounds his human tongue was not built for. He laughed at his own mistakes instead of getting angry at them, and the sound of that laugh, easy and unguarded, was the first thing that made me believe he might actually be as simple as he claimed to be. Not simple in the mind, but simple in the heart, the way water is simple, moving where it is meant to move without hidden currents underneath. Then, 6 weeks into our journey toward the resettlement station near Proxima, everything changed. We were passing through a quiet stretch of space, far from any trade lane, when the ship's alarms tore through the silence. Daniel was at the controls in seconds, his easy manner gone, replaced by a sharp focus I had not seen in him before. "Raider signature," he said, reading the screen fast. "Small ship, old model, probably scavengers looking for cargo. They should not even be able to see us out here." My hearts began pounding before I understood why. Raiders. The word alone dragged me back to the night my sky had been taken from me. The fire, the screaming, the moment my family's hands were pulled from mine. "They cannot take me again," I said, and my voice came out smaller and more broken than I wanted it to. "Daniel, they cannot take me again." He turned from the controls just long enough to look at me, and in that look there was no fear at all, only a fierce, steady calm that seemed to fill the whole room. "They are not taking you anywhere," he said. Go to the back room, lock the door with the code only you know. Whatever you hear, do not open it until I say your name. I did not move at first, frozen the way I had been frozen on that stage, waiting for the world to decide my fate without me. Then Daniel said my name, gently, the way he always did, and something in me broke free enough to run. I locked myself in the room and pressed my back against the cold wall, listening. The ship shuddered as something struck its hull. Alarms blared, then cut to a tense silence that was somehow worse than the noise. I heard Daniel's voice through the thin door, calm and commanding, speaking to someone over the comm system, his words too muffled to fully understand, but his tone unmistakable. He was not asking, he was warning. Minutes passed like hours. I thought of my family, of the last time I had heard fighting outside a door I could not open, of how that night had ended with everything I loved taken from me. My claws dug into my own palms as I waited, terrified that history was about to repeat itself in a different ship, with a different face on the other side of the wall. Then, silence. A long, complete silence that stretched so far I began to wonder if it meant the worst. Veska, Daniel's voice, right outside the door, steady and unharmed. It is over. You can come out. I opened the door slowly, half expecting a trick, half expecting a trick, half expecting a trick, to see him change the way every safe moment before had eventually changed. Instead, I found him standing in the corridor, tired, a small mark on his cheek where something had grazed him, but whole and alive, and looking at me with the same steady eyes he always had. The raider ship pulled back, he said. Old scavenger crew, poorly equipped. I convinced them this was not a fight worth finishing. He did not say what convincing had involved, and I did not ask. What mattered to me in that moment was not what had happened outside that door, but that he had kept his promise. He had stood between me and the thing I feared most, and he had not let it reach me. You did not run, I said quietly, still shaking. You could have run. You could have left me and saved yourself. I told you, he said, sitting down slowly across from me. I do not stop when someone I care about is in danger. That includes you now, whether you are ready to believe it or not. Something shifted in me that day, something that 3 years of chains had not fully managed to break. It was not trust yet, not completely, but it was the beginning of it. A small crack of light in a door I had thought was sealed forever. Over the following weeks, that crack widened. I began speaking more freely, telling him small pieces of my life before the raiders came, the songs my mother used to sing at the turning of each season, the way my whole cloud spire would light with lanterns during the harvest nights. He listened without interrupting, without trying to fix the sadness in my voice, simply letting me speak it into the space between us, until it weighed a little less. He told me about his own losses too, a friend he could not save during his years running supply routes through the border conflict, a decision he still carried heavily, even though he had made the only choice he could have made at the time. We were both carrying weight, I realized, just different shapes of it, and somehow sharing that weight made each of our own pieces easier to hold. By the time Proxima Station came into view on the ship's main screen, I no longer flinched at loud noises the way I once had. I no longer braced my shoulders when Daniel entered a room. I had begun, slowly, carefully, to simply exist beside him instead of enduring him. The station itself was unlike anything I had seen since my sky was taken. Ithran refugees moved freely through open markets, their voices raised in conversation rather than fear, their wrists bare of any binding at all. Daniel walked beside me through the crowded corridors, not leading me, not gripping my arm, simply walking at my pace, letting me stop wherever I wanted to look, to breathe, to remember what freedom felt like in my chest. We found a small community of Ithran survivors near the eastern docking ring, families who had scattered during the raids and slowly found their way back to each other across different stations and systems. An older woman named Miri, who had lost her own daughter to a different trading stage years before, took one look at me and pulled me into an embrace before I could even give her my name. In her arms, I finally let myself cry, not from fear, but from the strange, overwhelming relief of being surrounded by people who understood exactly what I had survived without needing a single word of explanation. Daniel stood back during that moment, giving me space the way he always had, and when I finally turned to find him, I saw something in his face I had not expected. Not pride, not satisfaction at a job well done, but something quieter, something that looked almost like relief of his own, as if a weight he had been carrying since that auction stage had finally begun to ease. "You do not have to decide anything right now," he said, when I approached him later that evening, the market lights glowing warm around us. "You can stay here with your people. You can come back to the ship if you want to see more of the galaxy first. You can choose something else entirely that neither of us has thought of yet. Whatever you choose, I will support it." I thought about his words for a long moment, watching the lantern light flicker across the market stalls, listening to Ithran voices calling out prices for spice bread and woven cloth, sounds that felt achingly close to the harvest nights of my childhood. "I want to stay," I finally said, "for now, not because I am afraid to leave, because for the first time in 3 years, staying feels like my own choice." He nodded, understanding immediately, the way he always seemed to understand the things I struggled to put into words. "Then that is exactly what you should do." 6 months later, I stood in that same market, no longer a newcomer clinging to Miri's side, but a familiar face known by name to half the stall keepers along the Eastern Ring. I bought spice bread for a table full of family I had built for myself, out of scattered survivors, and shared grief turned slowly into shared joy. My wrists were bare, my steps were unhurried, and no one on that station looked at me the way the buyers on that trading stage once had. A young human woman in an Alliance uniform passed by, nodded politely in my direction, and continued on her way without a second glance, the same way she might nod to any other resident going about an ordinary day. I nodded back, and felt nothing but the quiet, astonishing ordinariness of it, a feeling I had once believed I would never be allowed to have again. Daniel still visited when his roots brought him near Proxima, always with the same easy knock on Miri's door, always waiting to be invited in rather than assuming he was welcome. We had become something neither owner nor property, neither debt nor obligation, simply two people who had walked through fear together and come out the other side, changed by it. I think often of that first moment on the auction stage, the bell ringing, my body going still, waiting for a hand that I was certain would hurt me. I think of how wrong I was about what that hand would do, and how right the old stories had been about one single thing. Humans truly do not stop, not when it matters, not when someone they have chosen to protect stands trembling in front of them. The difference, the one thing every frightened whisper on every trading stage across the galaxy had gotten wrong, was this. That refusal to stop was never a danger meant for me. It was a promise, standing quietly between me and every shadow that had ever chased me, waiting patiently for the day I would finally believe it was true. I believe it now, every single word,